Hello and welcome to Literacy Now, the show where you will learn how to find and access the best resources for a topic quickly. My name is Nancy Messina, and today's topic is financial literacy. Financial literacy might be a sensitive topic for some people to talk about. Not everyone likes or feels comfortable talking about money. Today, we aren't going to talk about money specifically, but about the resources available to you in order to become financial literate. Some you will be able to check out on your own and test your own financial skills, but other sources will focus on working with others to learn more. So how financially literate do you think you are? You might be surprised to learn that according to Standard & Poor's Ratings Services Global Financial Literacy Survey done in 2014, only 57% of adults in the United States are considered financially literate. This survey was done on an international scale where over 150,000 adults from more than 140 countries were surveyed. Even with only 57% of adults being financially literate, the U.S. still ranked 14th among countries surveyed. Through this show, we are hoping to increase the financial literacy of our viewers and to give you a better understanding of where to go when it comes to learning about financial products. When we come back, I will be joined by the Business and Marketing Department Chair at Lindbergh High School to learn about different sources and how you can become financially literate.
Fancy pants peanut butter?
A big screen television.
You haven't even bought a sofa yet.
A motorcycle? When your father finds out, he's gonna flip his shoes with two buckles? What do you even need two buckles for? Mr. Big Shot, buying whiskey shots for everybody in the bar. From the looks of it, I'd say nobody even remembers.
Feed the pig.
Thank you. You got a king?
Go fish! In your face, in your face,
It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Welcome back. I'm now joined by Lindbergh High School's Judy Girard. Hello and welcome, Judy.
Hi, how are you, Nancy? Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's great to have you here. So as a high school teacher, you impart financial wisdom to your students. What do you think is the most important takeaway for your students?
Well, there's a lot to take away from our personal financial class that we instruct our kiddos in, but I think decision making is probably one of their most important concepts they need to walk out with, and how they make well-educated decisions. One of their first choices they're going to have to make before they walk out of our building is think about what are they going to do after they graduate from high school. And for some kids, that's very daunting. Our goal is to help them identify, ideally, what are some career choices that are available to them, and how those career choices have a direct impact on their lifestyle. And so the graph that we're going to be looking at is their relationship between education and income potential, and education and potential unemployment. And so one of those facts that we really have to address with kids is that you need to start understanding that your education is like tools in a toolkit. And the more tools that you add into that toolkit, the more useful you are to that employer. And so the more diversified those tools are, the more beneficial they are to increasing the job performance, the employer is willing to pay for that value. And so we really want to help kids understand that if you can get an idea of what you want to do and what kind of skills are necessary, and so what kind of education is necessary for that, I think they'll have a better understanding that income relates directly to how much are you willing to put into it, and that your income has a direct reflection on the lifestyle that you wish to attain. So those are one really big idea that we want our kiddos to understand, and that how that affects really their employability. But the other one is really being maybe change agents, or understanding that life is about change and how you adapt to change, and making them feel comfortable with that, and that what they walk away from high school is not going to necessarily be what it looks like at 30, at 40, and 50. And how are you going to adapt to what's happening around you and how can your skills adapt to what's happening around you. So hopefully I can walk out giving them some insight into that.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So you work in a high school here in Missouri. So what is currently being done in the state of Missouri to prepare students to be financially literate? So you're sending them out with decision-making skills, but what makes them financially literate, or what does the state have for them?
Well, Missouri has a grade A in financial literacy, is what data shows. Surveys have, Chaplain College actually did a survey on how they grade each of the states, and Missouri is one of the few, I think there's 5 states that have a grade level of A. And the reason behind that is back in 2005, the Missouri Board of Education decided to, before the Great Recession, which I found that very insightful, was our students need to walk out with a minimum standard of skills understanding personal finance. And so they adapted standards in 2005 that they felt every one of our graduates should show proficiency in understanding and being able to apply. And so the graduating class of 2010 was the first class to have to graduate with at least a half credit of personal finance, or there can be courses in which the content is embedded into that content. So like we have AP Economics at our high school, Accounting 1, things like that that help adapt or include some of those key ideas in it.
Okay.
Those key competencies I think are really important. We want to make sure that kids understand income and what are those sources of income. Money management, so how do I budget that money that I have. In addition to that, spending. We know we're going to be spending a ton of money, so how do we spend it? What's the best way to allocate that income to the appropriate expenditures? Credit management, which is huge, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about credit management as we kind of wrap up. And then obviously preparing for the future, saving and investing. And so we try to give them big ideas, resources that may not connect with them right now. Not too many 14, 15, and 16-year-olds kind of grasp all that. But I think as we're talking about today, really show them that there are so many phenomenal resources that are out there that they can continue to use to help them better prepare and make better decisions as they go on their own.
Awesome. So that is great. And we're going to talk about some of those resources today, so that'll be great. For those people that didn't get a financial class when they were in high school and they're not currently in school, what resources would you recommend to those people? So just the everyday citizen.
Well, we don't have all day to address all these, but I think there are so many resources that are out there, and I'll address some online resources, and then there's just a few books that I've suggested, and then some magazines. But there's so much out there that our local libraries can really add to an individual's financial literacy. Some of my favorites, one is Practical Money Skills. So it's practicalmoneyskills.com, and it's supported or sponsored by Visa. So yeah, it is a for-profit organization, but it understands that it really needs to be community-based and help reach out to help promote financial literacy among all of its consumers. And so there's resources for parents, there's resources for the college grad, there's resources for content that you can educate your pre-K with all the way up through college. So it can talk about budgeting, what are resources for college, how do I start saving, calculators that I think are really important, so mortgage calculators, car loan calculators, college calculators. So anybody can really benefit from that website. And another website that's very consistent with that is 360 Degrees of Financial Literacy. That one is sponsored by the National Council of Professional Accountants, and they have very similar resources. Once again, they have ones for content for veterans, contents for couples just getting married. If you are married and potentially going through some life crises, one of the I just actually read an article they had on there for preparing to take care of your parents, the elderly, and those are all things that we're all dealing with and may not have ever had to cross that path before. And so to go to resources like that and just see what articles are available, what surveys are out there, what information and content is available, just to, once again, everything is about decision making. So when you can become more educated on what are some of the options that are available, you know what those alternatives are, you're going to make a better decision for you, for your household, for your family, potentially your parents and such. So those are two really great sites I like. The St. Louis Federal Reserve, which we're so lucky to have here in St. Louis, has a phenomenal education department that invests a tremendous amount of time in finding resources, creating content for educators.
Okay.
One of their big pieces they do is literature across education, and so for kindergartners and pre-K and elementary students, finding great textbooks and not textbooks, but just books, literature for students to read, and connect that to how do they prepare for what do they want to do for the rest of their life? What are some choices that are available that you can do whatever you want? How do you start managing your money? Things like that,
okay.
I think are really valuable. They have infographics. They have online resources where a student can learn on their own and on their own pace. So that I think has been a phenomenal resource.
And do they only have online resources, or do they have some in-person resources? So if you went to the Federal Reserve, would they do anything?
No, the St. Louis Federal Reserve is truly for financial institutions.
Okay.
So they do have a great free museum down at their main level, which anyone can come down in the city of St. Louis.
Okay.
I believe it's on Broadway, and anyone can come in and visit the museum, and the museum's got very hands-on, interactive activities for all ages. I think anyone would really learn from a lot of the fun activities that they have in there. So if I could promote a little field trip to downtown and visit your St. Louis Federal Reserve, they do have a phenomenal museum that anyone would really benefit from. But no, I mean, everything's really online. They would have articles and things you can get in newsletters to better educate your understanding of the monetary system and the decisions that are made through the Federal Reserve, things like that. So they do have content that you can have accessible to. Magazines. There's some phenomenal magazines that are out there that are written at our level so that we can better understand. So Kiplinger, I really enjoy that magazine. And it has online basis too, but it's it still has a regular subscription that you can have in your hand and read. I read the St. Louis Post-Dispatch business section. But Money Magazine and Smart Money are also really great magazines too that are written for just the basic consumer that just wants resources to help them make better decisions.
Okay. Awesome. And I know a lot of these resources, different books and those things are available from your public library. We also have some on our campus. So those resources are definitely out there. You just kind of have to know which ones to go
and
to.
I just brought some examples of 3 books. There's Alexander Who Used to Be Rich Last Sunday by Judith Yorst, and she does a great job in really helping educators and even parents kind of help educate our kiddos about saving money and how do I spend money, and I can't always get everything that I want. And then there's literature for high school students that they have. And another example I brought was the Student's Guide to Personal Finance by Robert Lawless. Another great example of a great resource. Standard & Poor's Guide to Personal Finance by Morris & Morris is another great book that you could read. Like I said, there's a ton of them. I think Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey have a ton of resources that are available, literature that you can get through your local libraries as well. So for those people that need something in their hand to touch and feel and read, there's tons available.
Right. Awesome. Very cool. So as you've already talked about, there are a lot of different facets to financial literacy, but I think that one area that confuses a lot of people is their credit score or their FICO score. So what exactly are these, and why does it matter?
Oh, wow. I start talking about credit score as that adult GPA. High school students understand their grade point average, and they understand the value of a grade point average, and they understand that bigger is better, higher is better. And that's exactly what our FICO score does, or a Fair Isaac Corporation score. And what it is, it's a statistical number that depicts a individual's credit worthiness to financial institutions. It utilizes information from their credit history to determine this score. And that score range is as low as 300 to as high as 850. Okay. And so you do want to have the higher, the better. It's pretty impossible impossible to have a perfect 850, but it most certainly is something that you want to work towards. National average fits in right around 670 to 739. It's a static number. Nobody's score stays there permanently. Once you have it, you don't keep it. It is one of those scores where you can constantly be improving, working to improve, or it's something that you can really impact and negatively affect and drop your score through bad choices. So it is very important. Who utilizes that score? Well, there are 3 credit bureaus that gather information from your credit history for insurance companies and for loan potential facilities to provide this information to companies that want to determine what is this person's credit worthiness. If they need to get a loan from us, how can I trust that they're actually going to make this payment back? What's the risk that this person is going to be able to pay me back if I lend them money?
Okay.
And so Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, like I said, they gather and collect that information, and then individuals can see what their credit report is through these 3 credit bureaus for free. There's a lot of resources that are out there online that want to charge you for your credit report or charge you for your credit score. And I'm an advocate to say you don't have to pay for that information.
Okay.
Each of the credit bureaus will offer you a free credit report once a year. So if you strategically manipulate when you want those credit scores, you can get one in January, February, you can get another one maybe in June and July, and then you can get another one maybe towards the end of the year. And they should be relatively close to one another. I mean, they're not going to be the identical number between all 3 credit bureaus, or they're not going to have necessarily the most exact information on there, but it's going to be pretty darn close. If there's any huge differentiations on one credit report compared to another, that's where you definitely want to contact that credit report agency, see what information's on there, see how it maybe differs from the other, and then you need to find out how to get that information resolved, because your credit report most certainly can impact a variety of areas of your life. Insurance rates. Right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
Your insurance rates, you're making premium payments on a monthly basis, no matter if it's for car insurance, homeowners insurance, life insurance, health insurance, whatever that might be, you're making monthly payments. You're getting a service. And so these insurance companies want to make sure that they're getting paid. And so they're going to take a look at that credit report to say, what's the risk that this person's going to pay me on a regular basis? What's the risk that this person may likely not have some type of accident or have something that may impact the value of that premium? So what's the risk? So insurance companies look at that. Employers are now looking at that. Leasing agencies are looking at it. So if I want to rent an apartment, what's on my credit report? Because once again, that's another type of service credit where you're in someone's place and you're making a payment, and if you don't make that payment on a regular basis, that impacts their ability to fix the facility, maintain the facility, their profits and such. And so they take a look at all of that. So most certainly it's going to affect, and then rating scores as far as if you want to get a loan.
Right.
The higher your credit score, the premium interest rate that you're going to get, the lower the cost of borrowing will be for you, because the less likelihood that you're at risk. And so all those things are impacted through that credit report and through that credit score. And so just like kiddos should care about their GPA when they're in high school or when they're in college, most certainly you should be conscientious of what your credit score is. It's not something you need to know on a monthly basis. I couldn't tell you what mine is off the top of my head, but I don't necessarily need to know this nanosecond. But it is something that I'm very aware of. And I think an individual needs to be very aware of the credit score as well.
Okay, so what determines your credit score? What are the pieces that go into determining that number, that magical number?
Sure. So there's 5 areas in which FICO really looks at calculating that score. And some genius logarithm is out there determining what that number looks like for you. But 35% of it comes straight from your credit history. And so they're really looking at your character. How often have you ever made a late payment? Do you make more than the minimum payment? Do you pay your debt off ahead of schedule? Those are all things that affect your risk? Can I count on this person to make a payment? So we kind of call that as like, what is your character towards repayment? Are you good? Are you a good steward of your money management? And do you pay your bills on time? Do you pay them ahead of schedule? Do you pay them off? So that's 35% of your score right there. Okay. Another 30% comes from just how much do you owe? So how much debt do you have compared to your credit limit? And so, really making sure that you're not borrowing all the way to the maximum every time that you get a chance, but saying, okay, yeah, I have some debt, and that's good to have some debt because you have to show good character in making that debt repayment to show that you're a good steward of loan activity. So those kind of go hand in hand, but how much do you owe is a big component of that. Another characteristic they're looking at is 15% comes from the length of your credit history. And so, I'm an old fart. I've had credit since I was 18 or 19. And so I've shown for a long period of time that I can make my payments on time, I pay off my debt, things like that. And one of the biggest questions I get from high school students is, I'm 18 or I'm 19, do I have a magic credit score? And I said, well, one of those big components right there is that you don't have the length of credit history. And, depending upon if your parents co-sign on a credit card for you, things like that, do you have your own bank account? All of those are different for each kiddo. And so that's going to look different as far as that length of credit history for a particular student.
Okay.
Another two areas that it comes from is 10% is the type of credit that you have. So do you have installment credit? So do you have a car loan? Do you have a home loan? Do you have revolving credit? How much revolving credit do you have? So those are your Visas, your MasterCards, your, I have a Target credit card. Oh, so, every time that you go to Old Navy and they go, you can get 20% off. Yeah, I open up that credit card. So how much of that do you have? Okay. And the other 10% is going to come from how often are you asking for credit? So requests for credit. So they're looking at how often is someone doing an inquiry to say, yeah, this person would like to get credit, and that literally is like a little hash mark on your credit report. Every time you have someone inquire that you might want potentially get a loan. So all of those together create this number, and it looks different for everybody. And like I said, it's very flow. It can go up and go down based on any combination of those 5 factors.
All right. Pretty awesome. A lot goes into that, though.
A lot goes into it.
Okay, so that was a lot of information about credit scores. But what happens if I have low or bad credit? What can I do to, maybe make it better?
Okay. There's a lot of things that we can start doing. First of all, you just need to understand where am I spending my money and what kind of debt do I currently have. Okay. So I think it's very important to make sure that we're thinking about saving before I decide about buying. We are continually growing these generations of I want what I want when I want it versus I need to save and get it when I earn it. And so that's the first thing I'm going to say is, first of all, do you really need to have it? So making people really evaluate their spending and their purchasing decisions. From there, how am I making payments? And understand what are my payments to those debt organizations. So am I paying just the minimum payment? Am I paying more than the minimum payment? You should never make a payment on the due date. You should be making payments way ahead of schedule. You can make payments 2 days, 3 days, 4 days in advance. If you can pay off any debt, that looks good as well. And so organizing your debt, I think Dave Ramsey has a great idea, and it's been utilized by many other credit gurus, but they're going to say, take a look at all of your debt, take a look at the terms of agreements that you have with them. So what is the interest rates that you're paying on that debt and how much you owe on those debts? And obviously some of those are going to be installment payments where, I'm paying on this mortgage for 30 years. I'm paying on this car loan for 5 years. I'm paying on this student loan for 15 or 20 years. And those are understandable. But then, take a look at some of that other debt and say, okay, what are those interest rates that I have? And try to pay off those highest interest rates first. But also still making those minimum payments toward those other, but then try to, if you have extra monies, pay that higher interest rate off first. They call it the snowball debt kind of policy, where you're saying, okay, I then can continue to use, as I pay off one debt, use that amount that I was paying towards that other debt, now towards this debt. And you can continually start paying off that debt as you go. Easier said than done, but you have to be methodical about it. You have to make it a focus and a goal if you want to get out of debt.
Okay. Awesome. Very good. Well, that leads us straight into our next one of what resources are available for helping you create a budget? Because probably you're going to need a budget if you have debt and trying to increase that credit score.
Absolutely. So the two websites that we addressed earlier, practicalmoneyskills.com and then 360 Degrees of Financial Literacy have great just online resources right there on budgeting. And they'll have calculators. And I think one of the first things they're going to say to you is, what are all your expenses? Where is your money currently going? And are there expenses that are required every single month? And so those expenses you have to really make sure that you're taking a look at. And so are you looking at your past month's expenditures, and are you throwing it out on an Excel spreadsheet and you're looking at, oh my gosh, I really spent $25 at, Starbucks again, things like that. And do you really know where your money is going? And from there, say, okay, these are my payments that I have to make. These are my budget criteria. These are my fixed expenses that no matter what else happens in my life, I need to make these payments. So create a budget. Make sure that you understand that budget. From there, understand what are your needs and your wants, and say, okay, these are things that have to happen in my lifestyle, and these are things that I want to have happen in my lifestyle. So you might not necessarily get those wants right away. So are there other ways to maybe potentially increase your income? I think many of us have our sole priority career profession, but there's so many other fun jobs that you can start being entrepreneurial on to increase potential income sources. If you have a bigger lifestyle than what your current income and budget can really fix, then you need to increase the income. If you're not willing to cut the expenses, then you need to increase the income to live that lifestyle that you want. So income, looking at expenses. From there, establish this savings. And we'll talk more about savings here in a little bit, but first of all, you have to pay yourself first. So really making sure that you're pulling out 10% of your income to put into this savings, into this nest egg, so that you can take care of your current surprises and then your future needs and wants that you have that are much more expensive, like paying for kids' education, paying for your retirement, things like that.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about more about savings. And so what advice would you give for saving money? Is there a magic number for putting money away?
There is actually, not necessarily a magic number, because that number is different for everybody based on what your income is.
Okay.
But my first philosophy is going to be pay yourself first. And I'm not going to be the first one that ever said that. But paying yourself first doesn't mean go out and buy yourself a fantastic bag this month. But it means, okay, 10% of my pay needs to go automatically into the savings account. And that savings account is going to help me get those things that I want. And so first of all, paying yourself first, but putting 10% of your net pay into the savings account is going to help build this savings over time. Some other things that you want to take a look at is that savings has to be 3 to 6 months of your fixed and variable expenses, so that when that emergency potentially occurs, your financial security, your financial stability isn't impacted. So when you're saving that 3 months and that 6 months, and it's going to take time. I mean, saving 10% every month is going to take a long time to get that 3 to 6 months worth of annual pay set aside. But when you have that, your financial stability, your household will not be so impacted when those emergencies occur. Loss of employment, maybe hospitalization, maybe it is, my refrigerator broke down. There's a $1,500 expense. If you don't have that savings, that means it's coming out of your monthly budget, and that means then that something's going to have to be traded off for, So instead of having to make those monthly decisions of what can I have and what can't I have, I've got this savings to help take care of those emergency situations. So when you have that 3 to 6 months of savings, it's not going to be in my checking account. There's ways of really growing it. You can have it in an interest-bearing savings account. You can have it in interest-bearing money market accounts. You can have small chunks of it in certificates of deposit that are earning higher interest rates. So the bank is paying you to save that money versus you constantly putting money in. And so, you don't need to have all of it available immediately, but liquidity is very important. So liquidity means how quick can I turn that money into cash for when you have those emergencies arise. And so those savings options will help promote liquidity.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Judy. You've helped us learn so much about financial literacy. I'm Nancy Messina, your host for Literacy Now. I hope to see you next time.